Sure. Just Jack's here.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order at 4:30. Are there any comments from the public? Hearing none, we will start with our educational showcase, the presentation of our annual audit with Weston Company.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Amy Frederick with Weston Company. Also with me is my partner, Michael Rossi. You all have in front of you the draft financial statement and draft management letter of the college. I'll start off by saying the audit went very, very well this year. Chastity and her team provided us everything we needed. It went very well. Student financial aid, all the departments, the purchase office, everybody that we needed to work with to get us what we needed, did so and made the audit process go smoothly. So the final culmination of the audit is this audit report, which we're going to go over tonight in draft. And then once the board is okay with it, we'll finalize it, get it off to Chastity to submit to the state, and then we'll also submit it to the federal government for the single audit, which is the compliance audit with the grants. I'm just going to go through a few of the highlights of the financials. I'm not going to go too in depth, but if there are any questions at any time, please feel free to stop me. So the financial statements are pretty much set up as the same as they have in the past. Pages 1 through 3 is the independent auditor's report. So that's our opinion on the financial statements themselves. It's an unmodified opinion, otherwise known as a clean opinion. It's the highest opinion we give as a profession and what the college has received in the past. So the first two paragraphs state that we've audited the financial statements of the college, and in our opinion, the financial statements present fairly. Further into the opinion talks about management's responsibilities. The next page talks about my responsibility as your auditors and the things that we have to specifically look at and consider when we're doing the audit. And then there's some supplemental information that we also have in the report. One thing to know, as in the past, the financial statements include the foundation financial statements as well as FCAs, because they are both component units of the college. So parts of the financial will be just about the college, but then other parts will consider all three entities. And I'll kind of point those out as we go through. So the next part of the audit report, pages 4 through 10, is management's discussion and analysis. This is meant to be a synopsis of what happened at the college during the year. It provides some more detailed information, it shows some comparative information to last year, talks about our results versus budget, allows management to add some narrative in there. It's just really meant to allow the reader to pick up the financials and peruse those 6 pages rather than all 54 to kind of see what happened. But I won't go over the MD&A in detail. I'll talk about the numbers when we get to the financial statements themselves. But the management's discussion and analysis is primarily just the college and only really talks about the college. It doesn't bring in the foundation of the FCA into this piece. So then I'm going to jump ahead to page 11. Page 11 is the first financial statement. It's a statement of net position, otherwise your balance sheet. Here we have the primary institution column, which is the college, and then we have the 2 component units detailed out separately. So just focusing on that primary institution column, you'll see that our total assets and deferred outflows at about $32.9 million. The biggest changes from last year is we had our cash go up due to a late draw that we did. I think it was the HERF funding, I believe, about $1 million. So that caused our cash to go up. We drew funds down that we hadn't really spent at that point. The other big change, we've talked about this in the past, is net pension. So if you look a couple lines up from total assets, we have a net pension asset of about $843,000. So what happened is about 5 years ago, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board came up with a new accounting pronouncement that required the state pension systems as a whole, TRS and ERS, to be valued annually. These valuations are done by KPMG, the auditors of the state, and the college has provided that information. Depending on the funding levels of this pension systems as a whole, the college will either receive their proportionate share of an asset or a liability. And all that really depends on is how the market return is for those pension systems, and they're able to invest in a whole bunch of things, real estate, stock, equities, things like that, and I'll detail that in the footnotes. But last year, both pension systems were more than fully valued. So they were over 100% valued. So we had a larger pension asset last year. This year, the TRS was found to be slightly underfunded as a whole for the pension system, about 98.6%. So we have a liability on the books for TRS and an asset for ERS because they were about 103% funded. So last year, if you were to look at these financial statements, we had a larger asset on the books, but really it's just the pension systems as a whole. It's their funding, and it does not affect the college, how it operates. You really have no say in it. You're told what to contribute for the retirement for your TRS and ERS employees. That's contributed by the college, and then you're just really given these numbers to include on your financial statements. So that is the one other significant change, but it's a change that you guys really don't have control over. The other bigger change is if you go to the liability section, one line up from total liabilities, we have an OPEB liability. That's our other post-employment benefit liability. This is something that your actuary will value annually. They do an update every 2 years. They do a full evaluation. They get all your census data for your employees, your retirees, what health insurance plans are being offered, and they come up with this long-term liability. It's the future liability that's estimated that you're going to have to pay out in perpetuity for health insurance for your employees and retirees. This liability went down this year about $1 million. It didn't go down because the census changed. It didn't go down because health plans changed. It went down because our discount rate, which is an estimate or an assumption that your actuary uses to come up with this liability, interest rates rose, your discount rate rose. The rising of that discount rate caused the liability to go down. So, and I'll point out in the footnotes, that is one of the assumptions that could have a significant effect on this liability. You still pay your health insurance premiums that you're supposed to pay every year. This is just a long-term liability that's estimated out into the future, and there are certain assumptions going into that. This year, the largest effect was because of that change in the interest rate, and the rising interest rate changes that liability. So then overall, our net position for the college at the end of the year is about $17.7 million. Most of that is our investment in capital assets net of debt. So that's our buildings associated that we have, and then a little bit of a long-term debt that we have against that, and then our unreserved, and some encumbrances. The foundation and the FCA, the foundation ended the year with about $6.2 million of assets, while the FCA ended the year with about $8.3 million. And again, remember, this is of August 31. So this FCA number doesn't show what has happened today with Campus View. So now we have sold that property, and that's since it's happened since the year end, but these are August 31. So that Campus View property and that asset's still listed here, but next year won't be. Page 12 is your statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in that position. So essentially our income statement. Here we'll see that our total operating revenues are about $5.8 million. It's down a little bit from last year. Our expenses are about $18.5 million. And then we have some non-operating revenues and expenses detailed out. So overall, our net change, we get an increase to that position of about $1.4 million, as opposed to last year, we had an increase of about $4.3 million. And you'll see that the foundation and the FCA both had a decrease in the net position. The foundation mainly based on the timing of when some scholarships were paid out and some projects that we're working on that we had received money in prior years on. And then the FCA further decreased in net position by about $970,000 at the end of the year. Then after that, we just have our statement of cash flows. This just takes us from our last year's ending cash to this year's ending cash, and you'll see at the bottom of page 13, the college ended the year with about $7.8 million of cash. All three entities combined, about $8.8 million. Then after that, starting on page 15, we have the footnotes to the financial statements. These are pretty much unchanged from last year. What they do is they give more description to the college, to the foundation, to the FCA, what our significant accounting policies are, and then some further information for some of the numbers in the financials, just to give some more explanation. I'm not going to go over all of the pages in the footnotes. They're pretty much unchanged, but I'm just going to jump ahead to page 25. Just want to point out how some of the footnotes, when you're looking at them and making sure that, some are based on the college, some are the foundation. So that footnote 2, restricted cash. The college didn't have any restricted cash at the end of the year, but the FCA did, so that's explaining here, the FCA's restricted cash, and it shows that the foundation also had no restricted cash. Footnote 3 is our student accounts receivable. That's specific to the college and what our AR was at the end of the year. And then We had footnote 4, our unconditional promises to give. This one's in regards to the foundation, so the foundation still has some outstanding pledges from prior years that they're collecting on, and it just shows that we have about $28,000 net in the current and about $65,000 left to be received on the long term. So it's just an example of a page in the footnotes that encompasses all 3 entities. The next page details out the investments of the foundation, how they're broken down into the different categories: cash, fixed incomes, and equities. Footnote 7 on page 27 at the bottom, capital assets. I just want to point this one out. This one is specific, this page is specific to the college. So these are the assets that the college has. So I pointed out that net investment and capital asset number. Your capital assets are comprised mostly of buildings, building improvements. We had some land and land improvements. This year we had some additions. We had some projects that we worked on. So those are some additions into the fixed assets. We had no disposals, nothing got retired that we took out. So net fixed assets changed from $19.4 million to $19 million because of our depreciation expense combined with the additions. And then the next page has the FCA's fixed assets, which will change when we look at this next year because it'll take out the buildings for campus and sale. The other footnote I wanted to point out, and I kind of talked about it a little bit, if you go to page 33. So I talked about your other post-employment benefit liability. That's the liability that your actuary values. It's a long-term liability. So this footnote starts on page 33, and it goes for a couple pages, and it talks about what employees we have covered, what retirees we have covered. So if you look at the top, you can see we have 112 active employees, and we have health insurance, but still we have 71 retirees. So that's a trend that we're seeing throughout, governments, colleges, where the retirees are tending to grow while the active employees are tending to decrease. So it's just a shift that's happening industry-wide. At the bottom, we have our assumptions that go into the calculation by the actuary. So you'll see that discount rate is 3.9%, but last year it was 1.95. So that almost 2% change in the interest rate due to the rising interest rate really caused our liability to go down. And on page 34, you can kind of see this illustrated. It's specific to this year, but what this is a sensitivity analysis. So it says we have assumptions that go into this calculation, one being our discount rate, the other being healthcare cost trend rates. 2 things that the college has absolutely no control over, but go into this number and what this number is valued at. And they both show that if one went up or down 1%, how that liability that we have to put on our books, how that could change significantly. So you can see that our discount rate at 3.91%, we have a liability of $5.5 million. With rates rising, if our discount rate were to rise in that calculation, our liability would further go down to under $5 million. And then if it went down, our liability would go up to $6.2 million. And the same analysis is showed for the healthcare cost trend rates. So it's just something I think is important to understand because you have no control over these numbers. These are assumptions going into these, but they can greatly affect that long-term liability. So then after that, we have, starting on page 37, we have some additional supplemental schedules that are required to be in the financial statements. There's some further information. 37 is the other post-employment benefit liability. This page will grow to a 10-year trend rate. 38 and 39 is for the pension systems as a whole that I talked about. And again, this is will become a 10-year trend analysis, just showing how these assets or liabilities are changing over time. And they are required to be in the financials for the governmental accounting standards. Then starting on page 1, we have some other supplemental information that state ed requires us to have in there. So we have a reconciliation of our revenues expenses from the annual report that's filed by Chastity in her office to what's in the audit. So this reconciliation is presented here. Schedule of operating aid and the schedule of FTE tuition reconciliation. So these are specific schedules that are required for state ed. Then after that, we have the second part of our audit, which is our compliance audit. So here we have 2 opinions starting on page 45. So we have the very first opinion, which is on the financial statements themselves that I talked about. Now we have our report on internal controls over financial reporting and compliance. Here we have no significant deficiencies, no material weaknesses. The business office does a great job. The controls are working, they're operating effectively, and we have no findings associated with internal controls over financial reporting. Page 47 is the opinion on the federal grants. So if you remember last year, we had the new HERF, the COVID funding. And with that COVID funding, it was an ever-changing set of regulations that were coming out. As the funds were being rolled out, the regulations were being rolled out. Also combined with that, at that time, you had changes in your business office and changes in management personnel. So the audit that when we took
that when the audit took place last year, we had a finding in regards to reporting. It is a very minimal finding, and all it states is that within so many days of the report being filed, you have to put it on your website. The college missed those days, and based on the timing of the audit happened last year to this year, we hadn't issued the report, and the reports were required. So again, we have a repeat finding of a couple days late being posted onto the website. Nothing significant, nothing major. All it really does is requires us to audit a little bit more of your federal programs and puts you at a higher risk for us. And it's just notifying the federal government. But again, it's with the new COVID funding. It was one of those ever-changing regulations, along with the changing personnel. Chastity has since, once the first finding was found out, fixed and changed the controls and made sure that this won't be continuing going forward. But that's really what this opinion states, and we have that finding, which we'll talk about. But page 50 lists out the federal programs that we have to look at. So overall, the college had $10.1 million of federal expenditures for the year. We specifically looked at the student financial aid cluster, which is about $3.5 million, and we looked at the COVID funding, the HERF funding, which is about 5.4. So we really looked at a good chunk specifically of your grant programs. So we always look at the student financial aid. We had no issues, no findings with that program. And again, the one small finding in relation to the HERF, the COVID funding. And that finding is detailed out on page 53 and 54. And then because it's relating to the programs and the controls, we do have a small management letter, which is a continuation of last year's. All it is a control over the reporting for those programs. And again, that will, I'm sure, be corrected for next year going forward, but that's all the management letter states. We had no issues, no new issues to report to the board. And like I said at the beginning, the audit went very smoothly. So, any questions on the financials or the audit report or the audit process at all?
Thank you.
No, it's good audit.
We have the opportunity right now to go into an executive session with the auditors if we feel that we have any questions for them. That would not be appropriate for public session. Does anyone think that that is something that we should do? Is there any reason that?
I think we should go into an executive session for a minute.
Okay. So a motion by trustee Jaslowitz to go into an executive session to speak further about certain things in the audit. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Trustee Landrieu, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. We'll take a brief executive session if we'll stop recording. And this should probably only take a couple minutes. On to, hopefully everyone has had the opportunity to review the meeting minutes that were in your packet. May I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes as published from February 16th? Trustee Peck, second. Trustee Gazi-Magada. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I have nothing to report as your chair, so we will move on to the president's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And share the screen for the recording. So we had a nice visit with the Chancellor, Student Chancellor on Monday, and I want to thank Dan Fogarty and Robin Town for putting that together, and all the faculty and students that were involved. Having had an opportunity to meet with the Chancellor and share some thoughts about the nursing program. In fact, if you peek in the corner, you might be in that upper right-hand corner.
Part of my right forehead, right there.
So we had the opportunity to showcase several highlights of the campus. He met with a wide variety of students on campus. The the sense that I got from him and from his staff is that he was very favorably impressed with our campus and with what we're doing here. And he has asked to follow up with me at some point just to talk about the things that are going on here. And I did have the opportunity to meet with him briefly. Fulton County Chair Scott Horton was able to be with us for part of the day. Assemblyman Smallin was also here for the first part. So it was nice to get those folks on campus and to showcase some of what we had to offer. Following day, we had a president's meeting where we had the opportunity to hear from Governor Hochul and the chairs of the higher ed committees from both the Senate and the Assembly, as well as the Chancellor and the Chief Information Officer from SUNY. Some main agenda items that were discussed in that meeting were cybersecurity threats to higher education, which have been ramping up as of late. There's a growing concern with hackers trying to get at our secure information because we're perceived as being more vulnerable than perhaps in the other industries, although I don't think that is actually the case. And I know with the partnership we have with the SUNY Information Technology Exchange and the SUNY Security Operations Center, we feel very good about the security measures we have in place on our campus. And we have not been subject to any of those threats recently. There have been, I think, 3 campuses in the last 3 months that have been hit and had successful attacks by hackers. So they wanted to make sure that we all understood how important it is that we're making those kinds of investments in cybersecurity and we're keeping up to date, because some of the trap that some campuses fall into is, their technologies protecting their campus are 10 or 12 years old, and that's just not cutting it anymore. So the bulk of the day was spent on talking about SUNY strategic enrollment strategies, including how do we increase the yield from our applications. I think across the sector, across the system, applications seem to be up, but the challenge is converting those applications to actual enrollments. So there was some discussion of that. There was a discussion of SUNY, as they have in the last couple of years, augmenting campus efforts with marketing support, and we look forward to that. They are putting in place a campaign they're calling "There's a Place for You," and that's specific to community colleges. Their plan is to put a letter in the mailbox of every high school senior that's personalized and talks about their opportunity to go to their local community college. So it's personalized not only to the student, but also to the community college and student sponsor area. They're also continuing work on a cascading marketing strategy or cascading enrollment strategy. You've probably heard about this in the past, but that's where, I want to go to one of the university centers, but I can't get in. So there's marketing directing you back to your local community college or other state-operated campuses that are of interest to you. They're also looking to expand the EOP program and potentially change some of the legislation around the EOP program. They of course don't have the ability to do that, but they would look to lobby to do that. The EOP program, the Equal Opportunity Program, has historically been somewhat restricted in terms of requiring full-time enrollment and being first time and some other factors. They're looking to see if they can expand that and make that a program that benefits more students. There was also some significant discussion about budget advocacy efforts. As you know, we're heading toward the period of negotiation on the budget, and really our time is almost over in terms of advocacy. But we have been working with our assemblymen and our senators to state our case and to try to improve the funding that's out there. So with that, they also had some time reserved for us to give them feedback about the strategies and practices that are in place. So, as I mentioned, this is budget negotiation season. The One House bills, as many of you know, were published the other day. I want to highlight some of the comparisons of the proposals. So specifically for us, as we've discussed in the past, the governor had put in place the floor, but unfortunately, she also put in a 20% pullback of base aid, subject to this nebulous plan that we were somewhat unsure what that meant. The Assembly has rejected that 20% pullback. They've also put in a 4% increase to base aid. And there's some other funding in there as well. Potentially an additional $100 million that would allow us to look at stabilizing operations. The Senate has also rejected the 20% pullback and included almost $70 million in additional operating aid. So that's very favorable. I'm not going to start the party yet because last year the Senate and the Assembly also had favorable proposals that ended up looking exactly like the governor's at the end of the day. So it's good news from the standpoint of they are not just accepting the executive's proposal and that there is additional funding for our operating aid. Some additional program aid here, some of which applies specifically to us, some of which does not. Primarily the one that's of interest to us is the $75 million transformational fund. Both the Senate and the Assembly accept the executive's proposal to add that $75 million that community colleges would be eligible for. We wouldn't be, that's not exclusively for community colleges, but certainly that is funding that we would be eligible for. We did benefit to the tune of a little over $400,000 this year for a similar program that she had, well, actually that the Senate and the Assembly put in place last year in the current year's budget.
How much was the total of last year's?
60 million. Oh, so it is an increase. Yeah. This is kind of hard to read, so I'll help you. The Senate and the Assembly are very interested in eliminating the TAP gap, or the difference between what a family is eligible for and what tuition costs are. Both the Senate and the Assembly are adding in almost $50 million to address that gap, and they're looking to raise income level limits to increase eligibility. Program review is something that's been bandied about every year. You'll see that only one house has proposed it, and it's the Senate. This really speaks to expediting program approval through the state education department, through the state university and state education department, which can sometimes lag, considerably from when we want to get these programs in place. And then the on this slide is nursing simulation and allowing nursing simulation to replace a certain amount of clinical instruction, which I know that the immediate reaction to that is, but one of the things that you'll hear is that actual clinical instruction often doesn't, and I can let Evan speak to this, but often doesn't allow you to do the things. Only one house has put that in there. We'll see where it goes. It's something that SUNY has been advocating for and could potentially lead to better nursing skills, despite the immediate counterintuitiveness of.
We do a lot of simulation and would like to do even more with our nurses as they're on job training.
Yeah.
Because you can't do compressions on a live body. So
Sure we can.
Lots of things you can do on a simulation that you can't do. It's just getting that time in the units that's so important, and with the other nursing instructors and colleagues, it's so important as part of that clinical. So, yeah.
Okay, so this is on the capital side. This is where we put in our requests. The state university forwards that to the division of budget. The division of budget works with the governor. So, she's put in the $106 million worth of requests that community colleges put in. We have a chunk of that. Both houses have accepted that. The rest of those really apply to other institutions. So this is, I briefly mentioned this before in the first slide. This gives you a little bit more detail on what that $100 million for state operated campuses, community colleges, and statutory colleges. This is money that can be used to help with operations. So previously, these strategic initiative funds or these excellence funds or whatever label you want to put on them have been for things other than operations. The Assembly has heard us and our sister institutions in that, we are struggling with operations. And so they've made a proposal that provide a $100 million pool that we could tap into to help with some of those things. So that was unexpected and it's encouraging. The discouraging part is it's the Assembly and not the Senate nor the executive. So we'll see where that ends up as they negotiate through the process. A few other things in terms of legislation. Really, again, these are for all campuses. The most important one for us here is the TAP program changes that I highlighted earlier. There's a little bit more detail. And I will send out to you the full text of the comparison of these things because I realize these slides are impossible to read. And for those who are interested and want to get more into the detail, I'll provide that for you. The other two items here. Again, the assembly language and the top one about addressing enrollment fluctuations and financial stability. This is where they're looking to get some plans. Instead of tying money to plans, they put a separate piece of legislation out there asking us to develop a plan and asking the state university to develop a comprehensive plan as opposed to just the holding back aid and proving it if we get our plan. So those changes again, there's a lot there. It is somewhat encouraging, and I will send out the full summary for you to review at your leisure. And we'll see what happens in the next 2 weeks. Our PTK chapter has once again achieved REACH status. They get this status by successfully recruiting PTK students, and I don't recall the exact thresholds that they have to meet, but I think this is something like the 7th year in a row that we've achieved this status, so it's a nice honor for our PTK students. And then, as we've all been following, both our men's and women's basketball teams are in the national championship tournaments. Some of us had the opportunity to go to the men's game in Herkimer last night. Unfortunately, we lost in overtime. They played again today at noon, and they lost in the consolation game that they're into. But still, particularly for the men's team, the turnaround from last season to this season to get to the national tournament, it's phenomenal. It was a lot of fun to watch the game. The guys came out and battled hard. The women play in about 2 hours from the we had the first round bye, so we're hopeful to see them.
Where do
They're in Rochester, Minnesota. So we are planning to put it up on the screen during dinner. Jackie was kind enough to grab the programs from the men's game for everybody, just as a souvenir, so you can see the men's team and the other teams that are participating in the championship. So, and also, because he's here, must acknowledge Evan and his accolades this year, all conference.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
And that concludes my prepared remarks. Happy to answer any questions about those items or anything else you may have.
Thank you. The College Senate report is in your packet, and we'll move to Trustee Sawicki if he has anything to share tonight.
I have plenty to share today. First thing, I do want to say, thank you very much, President Truckmiller, for the recognition. I really do appreciate it. It does not go unnoticed. Unfortunately, at the last meeting, as many of you know, I was not able to attend for the very reason that I was at a bowling match. So that was a bit bittersweet for me because as a lot of people know, I do enjoy these very much. But with that being said, it's going to be a little more lengthy today. The meeting minutes that I have from our last Senate meeting aren't really all that bulky. There's a little bit of a recap and just like some cleaning up of some information. But a lot of the stuff that I'm going to present to you today is going to be related to the athletics and also to the chancellor visit. And Trustee Peck, I'll also tell you a little bit about what our class actually did talk about following the meeting with the chancellor about the simulation. So first, we'll just hop into the minutes here for the Student Senate. If you guys do remember, I did touch a bit upon how we were going to be distributing the feminine hygiene products around the campus, in the PE building, in the gender neutral bathrooms, and the library. That was successfully done and a lot of positive impact from that. And that's been going just fine. So we just did that recently. Now we'll move on to just some of the new business that we discussed about. One thing that we did touch upon was the addition of Leanne Pratt to our team has shown positive results that we haven't seen in a considerable amount of time. The census for the last semester and last year going back when I was also part of the Senate was anywhere between like the high single digits to the low teens. Since Leanne Pratt has joined us, we have started a few new clubs and we're averaging anywhere between 18 to 21 members at a meeting. That's a huge difference. And there's representation for a multitude of different clubs when previously we're only seeing the biggest clubs get representation. And I think that's a really, really positive thing and it really should be attributed mostly or fully to Leanne Pratt's addition. So I think that was a fantastic addition based on what we're seeing here. She's done a great job. I've talked to many students from the Student Senate that go regularly. They tell me that she's very proficient in involving everybody, no matter what the size of their club is or what they're representing. And she has come up with a lot of different activities and ideas that have diversified the culture and the ability for students to really get their name out there, get the word out there about what they're trying to represent here. And I think representation has been fantastic from her, and she deserves a lot of credit for that. So moving on, as I was touching upon about Leanne Pratt, she was also bringing up some tips about how we can continue to increase the census in our clubs, because since we're starting to do that, we want to continue to do that. So her plan is to like every month, maybe have like using the student union to just have club tables where we have a bunch of representatives, whether it be the president, Senate rep, student rep, faculty rep, sit at tables and invites other students, prospective students to join these clubs to talk to them about what the clubs are about and what the purpose is as well. And I think that's another really great idea that she brought to the table. Moving on, as you guys do also remember, I did talk about the $7,500 allocation that we approved in the meeting in, I believe, January to the grad tech program to allow them to have sufficient amount of funds to go to their conference at the end of the spring semester. And that was approved and that went through, and they now have the outstanding budget to do so, and they're going through with the expense process. In terms of other financial movements, there hasn't really been any other motions for any other clubs. Clubs financially, there hasn't really been any changes. There has been some intake of funds from fundraising, but there really hasn't been any expenses. So the overall budget stays the same for most clubs without the allocation of the $7,500. For vacancies, so since we're at the halfway point of the spring semester, we start to bring up vacancies. So Leanne Pratt and the other members of the club can get ready to start the voting process and the searching process for the spots that we will have to fill. So those spots will be myself, the student trustee, the chair, the co-chair, and the secretary of the Student Senate Association. However, as I will continue to say over and over again tonight, with the addition of Leanne Pratt, I don't see that being one problem whatsoever. She has done a fantastic job and she deserves recognition for what she's done for the student body. So as I said before, club budgets haven't changed much, and I have a laundry list of things that are being presented to students, and the participation has gone up noticeably. We also have that addition of the student involvement Facebook that a lot of folks have taken notice of. So really, there's just nothing but positives that I can say about what direction we're going in the student senate. But in terms of overall business, not much that we covered in that last meeting. So it was just really a recap and just kind of glancing at the fact that things are definitely going in the right direction. And we're hoping to continue to build upon that moving forward with the next 2 meetings that we have scheduled. We will have one in April and one in May, and it'll be the first week of April. And that was the recap for the meeting. Now I just want to go into the athletics. We are a very small school. I say this over and over and over again. The amount of accolades, accomplishments, and records and things that these teams have done this year, I mean, are phenomenal. I mean, I was looking at it once when we were going to nationals. Me and my bowling team, we couldn't stop talking about the fact that our girls team was undefeated and #1 in the region. It's just absolutely astounding that it does not matter what the size of our school is. We can continuously go out and prove to people that may not have ever heard of us before that we can compete with people that are 3-4 times the size of us. We had, as you did mention, Dr. Trucker-Miller, we did have our boys go to the region, even though they did lose to nationals. It's still a fantastic representation and a huge turnover from last year. And a big part is also for the increase in the census of the athletic teams as well. Speaking on behalf of the bowling team, our team was twice the size this year. We were able to go and compete, and we were able to bowl a team match that came within 5 pins of the all-time national record, which was second place all time with a 265 game for a 5-man team game. That was something that was really unexpected. As you mentioned also, we have our women tonight that are going to be going to battle. Hopefully they'll be pulling that one out tonight. But we've had so many, I mean, even in the fall too, just so many positives, so many accolades, so many accomplishments that I just can't list all of them tonight. But that's just another huge thing that is really commended for the athletic program and all the folks that have put the time in to make this possible. So then I want to go into, we also did talk about PTK a little bit. We have a student that I want to kind of bring to everybody's attention tonight because I really thought it was honorable what she is doing. When I was at my latest Student Nurses Association meeting, I got a contact from a student named Massa Massery. She is in the PTK chapter. She is a very involved student in the PTK chapter, and I felt that she really deserves to have her story heard and shared tonight, and I'm going to just do that real fast. So she is an incoming freshman. She lived in Syria about, I'm going to say 3 or 4 years ago. She didn't give me an exact year, but a few years ago she came to our country with her father and her brother and her sister, I believe. Her mother is still presently in Syria, and as many of us know, there is a lot of destruction, a lot of carnage, a lot of trauma in Syria at this time. She brought to my attention a few weeks ago that she was independently starting a campus-wide fundraiser to spread awareness for this cause. Also, specifically not only because of the personal aspect of her mother being there, but also because she really just, you can really tell that she cares about the cause for these folks over in a country that a lot of us here didn't really know about. And I was very surprised about. A lot of folks were not very informed on this matter. So she told me, and I told her the best thing I could do was spread the word to other clubs and also to you folks tonight. She is a very good student on the pre-med track who works tirelessly day in and day out, helping and supporting her family. And she's also putting in several hours a week, talking to multiple different people, multiple different representatives, faculty and staff to publicize this as much as possible. And there's been a lot of support. And also Dr. Trespalacios, also in the PTK chapter, has done a fine job of spreading the word on this, and she really deserves to have her story be heard. And I really have to commend her for what she's been doing, because as a member of the Student Senate and just the student body in general, she represents the school very, very well. And I think she deserves that recognition. And then moving on, specifically, I have to close out with the SUNY Chancellor visiting. So first, just a general overview. A lot of us students know that the Chancellor is a very busy man. He does a lot of tours. There's like 60 plus SUNY schools that he has to visit. She really did an outstanding job. And also there was a great audience with him. really just taking the time to just sit down and just genuinely ask the students about their experience and how they liked it here. And a lot of the students who didn't even know who Chancellor was before he had entered the room were just blown away by the respect that was shown by him and the genuine interest in our experience. And a lot of the appeal came from like the flashiness of all the people in suits and dresses, but I knew who you folks were. Some people did not, but I was able to explain to them why it's such a big deal. There was just overwhelming positivity from a lot of different people. I'm not just talking about the nurses, the student nurses. I talked to a lot of different folks about how they felt about the interaction, and I got nothing but positives back. Everything was conducted great, and our voices were definitely heard, and we definitely feel that way. And then just for a perspective, since it was prompted, I do have a little bit of a recap. So after we did visit specifically about that motion to have the 30% simulation clinicals, I got to talk to members of the first and second year students of the student body for the Nurses Association. And we were speaking about this a little bit. So the simulation experience is very, very important to us. And the reason why that is because you are limited to what your preceptor or the person that you're working with, and also the community that you work within. You are limited to the confines of those different factors. So we are in Fulton-Montgomery County, where we have smaller hospitals with lesser resources and usually a lesser diversity of folks that we take in. Just for like an estimate, not like a formal thing or anything, we were talking about it. There is not one pediatric patient, for example, that any of us have ever taken care of in our 2+ years for the second year nursing students. Most of the folks that we take care of are usually 60 years and older. So it's a lot of geriatric population that we see in this area. So in simulation, we practice a lot of skills and we do a lot of training on pediatric focused skills. And the reason why it's so important is because just from a short standpoint, pediatric care, geriatric care, and just general adult care are 3 completely different animals. And we just would not be able to get that scope of care in the field. And also, to another point, it really also depends on the person that you're paired up with. We have 1 instructor, and the ratio is 1 instructor to 9 or 10 nursing students. And you can only be precepted by your instructor one-on-one. They can't do 1-on-10. So you're usually paired with a nurse, and it's up to that nurse to involve you in as many skills as they want to. And not a knock on some nurses, but some nurses are more comfortable doing that than others. But in simulation, you are the nurse, and you can do these different things. You can do these different tasks, and you can simulate, and we also have new technology from the nursing grants. You can simulate any health problem. Like you can simulate like a heart attack problem, you can simulate a respiratory problem. You don't see a lot of those really acute situations in the local area. And I think clinical experience and hands-on experience with real hands-on work and patients in the field is beyond valuable, and we've learned so much from it. But there are also limits to that. And that's where the simulation part comes in. And I think that the simulation part, going to that point, and a lot of students agree, would not be something that would hinder the clinical experience, because we still get a lot of valuable experience out of working with the population that we have in the area. But a lot of that population is like the same type of population, geriatrics. So that's to the point where we talked about where the simulation experiences for us are very, very valuable. And to your point, you can't practice chest compressions on a mannequin, but you can practice a lot of valuable things and also learn a lot of things that you may not be able to get to do under the wing of another nurse. And with that being said, I know that was a lot for you to take in, but that is everything.
Thank you. We'll move on to the foundation report with Trustee Ghazi Bagata.
Good evening. Today, the first thing I want to talk about our Foundation 29th annual golf tournament. Usually, trustee sponsor a hole, and this year is the same. And for each trustee, their share, with the exception of student trustees, $30. And we have a lot of sponsorship, but still, Foundation is looking for more sponsorship as well as volunteer to help out. And we have some left, if you are interested. I overheard Mr. Landio just got that. Now we have 2.5. And foundation for the golf, we appreciate it immensely. It's going to be in Fox Run on May 23rd. The tee off is at noon. If you want any help, you can go to online or you can call foundation office. The second item is Prela Gallery will be hosting a Montgomery and Fulton County student art exhibition. The date is changed now from March to April 20th. The closing reception will recognition of the awardee, and it is on the 20th of April. There are over 300 pieces was sent to the gallery from 20 different high schools, and from this only 70 of them they can be displayed. The annual fee is around $60,000, but some part of this money is restricted, meaning people they want to spend on different projects, or for that, foundation really appreciate if all the board member, as well as both board trustee, as well as foundation board member, as well as the FM family, they contribute to that fundraising. We should thank the Foundation of Johnston Hospital. They've been very, very generous to our college and our student and our program. Each year, they give a scholarship to 3 of our nursing students, and each person received $3,000, and 3 RATTEC students, and identically they paid $3,000 for each student. Foundation, they sent a proposal for $75,000 for upgrading the CNA lab. In the past, they were very generous and donated $118 to upgrade the Red Tag lab. We are very, very grateful to them. The foundation, in recognition of Fulton-Montgomery Community College 60th anniversary, order fleece for the board members, as well as the sweatshirt for the member of the faculty and staff. Thank you. And the foundation fundraising for multi-purpose turf athletic field, and they sent 3 proposals to Senator Schumer, Senator Gillibrand, and Congresswoman Estefani. Thank you. And with that, I conclude my report. If there is no question, ask me, or if I cannot answer you, Mrs. Lanzi is here.
Thank you. We'll move on to finance with Trustee Wiseman.
Thank you. First, I apologize for my cough this evening. Thank you, Chelsea, for the reports. I want to congratulate you on a really strong audit result. So we couldn't get enough accolades for your efforts that you joined us, so we appreciate that. There's 2 expense graphs included in your packet, one that provides expense and budget data by major function, and another that provides expense and budget data by contracted services category. The graphs compare data for fiscal year 2021-22 to fiscal year 22-23. The expense summary budget versus actual for the period of 9/1/22 to 2/28/23, which is 50% of our fiscal year. To date, the actual expenses and encumbrances are 46% of budget. Expense detail by department provides by department a detailed comparison of our expenses and encumbrances to budget for the same period, 9/1/22 to 2/28/23. Again, 50% of our fiscal year. The finance statement for the period of 9/1/22 to 1/31/23, 42% of our fiscal year. There's no revenue includes billing activity through 1/31/23 for fall 22, winter and spring 23 semesters. This represents 100.8% of our tuition budget. While expenses incurred represents 5 months or 36.1% of budget. The budget transfer report summarizes budget transfers completed for the month. There are no contracts reported and no grants reported for the month. I do have a motion. The accounting firm of Weston Company CPAs, PC, has completed the college audit for the fiscal year ending August 31st, 2022. The Board of Trustees reviewed the management letter and financial statements for review and discussion. The President recommends that the Board of Trustees accept the FMCC audit report for the fiscal year ending August 31st, 2022. I present that in the form of a motion.
Do I have a second for trustee Liza's motion? Trustee McCarthy. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to buildings and grounds. Trustee Landry.
I'll just ask one question. There are two of the graphs for contracted services are considerably over budget and overspent from last year too. I just wondered what was driving those categories.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can certainly send you an email with the detail as far as what's driving those expenses.
Do you feel, Chesty, like it's a timing issue or is it a trend that we're going to be significantly over
I
budget?
mean, we've been tracking higher on contracted services the last couple of years. I know that was one item that came up in the annual report as well. And, you know, we had some iTech services that fall under there. You know, that's a pretty significant expenditure, and that's our IT services that come from SUNY as well. So, I mean, I can certainly give you more detail about that, but.
The one I believe is close to $500 million over
Yeah,
budgeted for this period, and then the other was like $50,000, so it's a lot of money.
yeah.
Some of that is timing, Jeff.
But that's why I wondered, that isn't that
Susan
big, so.
bills us in one lump for that. So,
And I think that's usually what it is, timing, especially this early in the year, but it's kind of jumped out.
Okay, buildings and grounds report, we just have one item I want to pay particular attention to. Out of your written report in your packet, the science labs phase 3 project, it's 90% completed. The final cleaning is taking place, punch list items. There are new doors expected, I guess, this month. And the other thing I just want to report is you're aware, as we were notified in email by Dr. Truckenmiller, that the daycare had a busted water pipe, and that water damage is being repaired in this particular point. So that's all I wanted to point out in the written report that's in your packet, if there's any questions. That concludes our report, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And we'll move to academic affairs with Diana Putnam.
I'd like to acknowledge the faculty efforts this semester. They've been heavily involved in general education updates. Every single month, there's been a long list of course updates, program updates, and more to come, but I'm happy to say that because of their efforts, we're actually ahead of the game. We're going to meet our deadline very easily, and we're actually ahead on the second deadline regarding associate degree in applied science programs. So kudos to them. I appreciate all of their hard efforts. More information on Phi Theta Kappa. They've been very busy. They've been very active in their community. It's good to acknowledge the student work in this area. The members collected donations for the Sentinel in collaboration with the Art Guild. This included small blankets, scarves, gloves, art supplies. Additionally, the group took on another collection for donations for the Code Blue shelter in Gloversville in Fulton County. PTK students rallied faculty members, staff, and fellow students for detergents, deodorants, soaps, all items desperately needed at those locations. So we appreciate all of the student efforts in that area. The BCP team of Andrea Scribner, Christy Davis, and Dan Fogarty presented to Northville Central School District teachers and guidance counselors about the various educational opportunities available to their students. In career and transfer, Andrea Scribner, along with Eileen Casey, Laura Laporte, and Dan Fogarty, met with faculty and staff from Stony Brook University to discuss recently signed nursing partnership. The focus of the agreement is to attract students to FM who are interested in dual admission to Stony Brook's Bachelor of Science program. It's actually an online degree program. Stony Brook faculty plan to visit FM this spring to speak with current FM students, faculty, and staff to promote the new agreement. In radiologic technology, Carla Nabat and Colin Bailey coordinated a professional development trip to Nevada for the ACRT conference. A group of 31 people, including 20 students and program alumni, attended. It was a very large group, a very large fundraising effort. They're appreciative for all of the additional funds to be able to make that trip possible. Carla Nabat herself, the director of the program, was also the opening speaker in Nevada at the National Educators Grad Tech Conference. Kudos to Carla for being selected for that prestigious role. In the humanities division, I'd just like to pay congratulations to Michael Youngs. He's an assistant professor and also the English chair of the humanities division. 3 of his poems were recently published in the Hudson Valley Writers Guild, and there's a link in the report if you'd like to take a look at his poetry. And another highlight in the technology division, William Ike, he's a new instructor. His emphasis recently has been in cybersecurity. He offered to serve on a committee at Amsterdam High School to assist them with curriculum planning and alignment of Amsterdam's program and pathway with FM's computer degree programs. He's also working with IBM to assist and provide recommendations related to upcoming hardware purchases being planned as part of the cybersecurity grant that FM has secured. He's in communication with an IBM representative who's actually the IBM Security X-Force Cyber Range program as part of that. And he just returned even through the snowstorm from a visit out there to help build his plan for the coming summer. So he's doing some really great work. He also registered a team for the CIS 246 Cybersecurity Administration course to compete in the NSL Collegiate Cup. The Cup is a biannual, hyper-realistic cybersecurity tournament for university and college students. According to that site, the ICL Collegiate Cup is the gold standard for higher education cybersecurity tournaments and the de facto competition for university and college students in the U.S. So congratulations to Billy for jumping right in and involving the students so actively in this area. It's an important area for us. It's an emerging, program. Hopefully they do as well as I expect them to do, knowing that Bill is leading that team. So, and that is the highlights from my report. There's plenty more details.
Thank you. And student affairs with Jackie Center.
Good evening, or good afternoon, evening. For spring 2023, FM has enrolled 1,375 students. This represents 822.8 full-time equivalent FTE students. A couple of things to highlight this evening. Our spring open house is slated for the 1st. It will begin at 10 o'clock. One of the highlights for this open house is an interactive breakfast session for potential students and their families to meet with our faculty and our staff. Workshops will be held throughout the day so that students can identify services that we offer, meet with financial aid. They'll be able to do their application right on the spot. We're looking forward to really hosting an in-person, on-campus, not a water main break date like we had in the fall, event for April 1st. Our food pantry is seeing a lot of foot traffic. The numbers are up. According to our attendance tracker, in fall, we had 916 visits to the food pantry. In spring, just as of February 9th, there were 324. So we are on track for surpassing our fall numbers. I think what's really important is to highlight the campaigns that our student development coordinator and Robin Town as well, my assistant, are really reaching out to our community to see if there are other ways in which we can get some additional financial support. Hannaford has been wonderful. They just elected or selected us for their bag campaign. So if you purchase a bag at Hannaford's, they will donate $1 for every bag that's purchased. So we appreciate their partnerships. We also appreciate the partnership with Stewart's, who donated $1,000 at the end of the fall semester to go towards the food pantry. So we're really building those relationships with our community, really leveraging what we have. And I'm using key strategic plan words because that is exactly what we anticipated would happen when we highlighted and identified those goals for our strategic plan. I also wanted to share the commons. So here we are seeing 772 individual visits from 170 unique students. They are utilizing tutoring and other services in the commons during the first month of the semester. So that's just January 26th. This is an increase of 205 more individual visits and 60 more unique students than the same period last fall. So this has become a really important space for our students to engage in, to identify support services, to really get some wraparound help to get them through the semester. So we also have an early warning system where we ask faculty to identify students who haven't come to class or are not doing well and perhaps could use some supports. We had 100% of our full-time and part-time faculty participate in that early warning system. That's the first time I think that's ever happened. So we are really excited about our connections that we're making with the students, not only in the commons outside of the classroom, but in the classroom as well with the faculty. Initiatives for spring in the commons include adding a TEAS test study session for pre-nursing students and the expansion of embedded tutoring service for our ENG 103 pilot courses and our MAT 125 courses. So with that, we've already talked about our sports teams. That concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. In your package, you'll see the diversity, equity, and inclusion report, and we'll go right back to I'm here. I am accreditation. So the team, the steering committee has been meeting and focusing on the standards themselves, identifying lines of inquiry, research questions that we would like to work through as we go into the self-study process based on each of the standards. We received a draft agenda from Dr. Hawk. What he is looking for from this group is about 45 minutes of your time, and it does not need to be the entire board. So I will let you all decide who might want to be interested in sitting with Dr. Hawk and learning more about the self-study process. I'm going to build the agenda. So I want to really identify a time that will work for the trustees. So if you can think about that and perhaps get some times and names to Maria, and Maria can let me know, and that will help me to identify an agenda to share with our liaison from Middle States.
And that's for May 3rd, correct?
For May 3rd, correct.
Any questions?
Thank you. Moving on to personnel with trustee Jasmine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have, in addition to our staff, Andrea Earl Neighbor was started on board February 21st as the C-STEP specialist. Andrea earned her master's in curriculum development and instructional technology from SUNY Albany and a bachelor's of elementary education with a concentrate in earth science from the College of St. Rose. Her most recent position was adult education at HFM BOCES. She is currently the owner of the family tradition tree farm in Fultonville. Andrea has prior experience developing and operating summer camps. She also is a member of the FM Connect Committee at Fultonville Central School. Presently, we have one search going on for a step specialist, full-time and grant funded in the finalist phase. And the institutional research and analysis, full-time is on hold. And that concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We'll move on to policy. Trustee Perry.
All right, I have two policies to bring forward motions on tonight for revision. The first motion is to revise policy 8010, college vehicles. The college vehicle policy has been revised to reflect the organizational changes and the reduction of the types of vehicles owned or leased by the college. And as a recommendation, the president recommends the college vehicle policy 8010 be revised by the board of trustees as attached. I bring that as a form of a motion.
May I have a second? Trustee Peck. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries.
Okay, the second motion I'm going to bring forward is a motion to revise the enrollment in online course policy. The background is the college policy on enrollment in online courses has been revised as a result of an assessment of the student success over the past 5 years. It is the recommendation of the president that the enrollment in the online course policy be revised by the board of trustees as attached. I bring this as a form of the motion to the board.
No second. Trustee Winston. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Does anyone have any further business to come before the board tonight? Okay, I'd like to make a motion for us to go into a brief executive session for an update on collective bargaining negotiations. May I have a second?
Second.
Trustee Jazowitz, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you very much. We will not have any business to conduct after the executive session, so we'll just see the rest of you in the other room for dinner.
So,